Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Alex here. So today I want to have the discussion around combining technology and education to really get at the heart of the question, what can technology do for us in the education industry? And I think that that's a really new question actually, that maybe we've only been able to ask ourselves for the past 10 or so years, but is constantly evolving as we start to go deeper down the technological route and deeper into the digital world. And this was a debate that we had in one of our classes this week, and there was a variety of opinions, some for technology and education, some against it. So if you're an educator or in the tech industry or have any opinions on anything I'm about to say, I'd love for you to include your comments down in the description below and I'll try to get back to you and respond to them. I think that this is a topic that really needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, and we really need to pursue the viability of technology with education. So with that said, let's get into it. So this class discussion started out with our professor asking us the question, does technology allow us to do things that are new, or does it just make some things easier? But while it was heavily debated, we came to the consensus that technology actually only allows us to make things easier. Yes, there are new technologies such as simulations, etc., but really all that allows us to do is do what we already can do in class and make it digital. And I think where this comes from is the idea that technology has made it easier to hear people's voices and to hear their stories and experiences and connect that to the topics that we've been learning in our schools for the past 50, 100 years. For example, social media and other technology outlets have really given rise to a lot of the social justice movements that we've seen in the past few years, giving people of color and other underrepresented groups a voice and a platform to voice their opinions and their injustices. And I think that's an important piece as we move into our 21st century learning, which we're moving away from this knowledge disseminated industrial-based learning and more towards the knowledge construction of combining your experiences with the knowledge that you're learning in class and making all of our learning student-centered. Online and in the digital world and using technology, you can be who you want. You can say what you want to say, where you want to say it, and when you want to say it. You can share a story under your real name or anonymous. And there's no limits on what you can say. And for some people, this really is giving them a new beginning. And I think this is where technology can shine. For example, if we're discussing a topic in class and then being asked to write a reflection, which honestly is most of what Teachers College is, reading an article or having a discussion and then writing a 3-page discussion on it. Sort of delving into your metacognition and understanding how you think and why you think the ways you do. Anyways, if you're in a discussion and you need to write a reflection on it, doing that in class is almost very superficial. You don't get the time to sit back and think and really craft your response to the question at hand. Whereas using technology and doing this online gives you the opportunity to step back and observe your biases, observe your thoughts, and really critically analyze them, giving you a deeper and more meaningful reflection and understanding of yourself. However, one thing that we should not do as teachers is to use technology to make a digital version of face-to-face interactions in class. The way our professor put it, and another expert in the technology field who currently works at the university that I'm attending Teachers College for, that we should be using technology for what it does best, and not what it can't do. And this comes from the understanding that all technology has a purpose and can solve problems. However, there are some things that technology just can't replicate, such as spending time together or understanding the nuances in face-to-face interactions or discussions. I'm sure as most of us who've been in university or any form of schooling that's been online can tell you, group work sucks online. It's very difficult to coordinate, it's very difficult to communicate, having only one person talking at a time, and balancing those social norms that would be inherent in a face-to-face conversation just becomes more and more difficult in the online realm and digital world. So in other words, we shouldn't be using technology to replace in-person interaction or in-person class. But where we should be using technology is to give students time to construct their own meaning of things before a group discussion or a class, etc. Then they can take these new understandings and compare it with those of their peers to construct their new meanings and new experiences that they're going to be taking with them throughout life. And I think this is where we sort of meet this hybrid model of technology, where we use technology what it is meant for and what it is good at, but we don't use it for what it can do. And we also need to be critical of the technology we use. For example, are students able to navigate whatever technology you're providing them on their own? And do they have enough time to navigate it? For example, most students, when they go home, they might be having to share computers with siblings, making access to these technologies much more difficult. And that's something that I've come across pretty commonly in the classes that I've attended or seen. That some of the students in high school, they're going home and they're sharing their computers with 2 or 3 siblings at least. And sometimes even their parents when they have to do work. And that doesn't give them very much time on a computer to play around with technologies or to do much learning. Also, when we're discussing technology use in the home, we have to understand that students aren't going to be able to pick up technologies in an instant. They might rely on their parents to access something or to help them understand something. And that's a big strain on the parents. And we have to remember that some parents are working 2 or 3 jobs to afford their lifestyle, or even just to survive. So are we as teachers really representing the class that we have through the technology we use? And now in terms of my specific teachables, I'm going to be going into high school, teaching chemistry and biology and general science, and I'm going to see if I can get a designation of physics through my master's degree. In terms of where I would use technology in my classroom, I would really revolve that around labs and experiential learning or inquiry learning, where various technologies can be very useful for students if you provide it to them well in advance of a lab or an inquiry period. For example, providing students with virtual labs and simulations and VR opportunities gives them a chance to practice their skills and connect the theory that they're using to the practical aspect of any job or any process. However, it does not replace the practical skills that they're going to be learning in the lab, or any of the interpersonal skills that they learn while doing labs, such as communication and teamwork skills and organization skills and planning. Or at least that's something that I haven't seen a digital technology that has helped with that yet, with respect to science labs. But I would also use technologies, for example, with follow-up reports. It gives them an opportunity to take what they observed in the class and the results that they got, and reflect on it, instead of taking up the valuable time that students have together to co-construct meaning. I think that as we move further into the digital age, there will be more learning technologies that come out relating to VR and simulations. And I think at that point there's further conversation to be had about how we can include those technologies in our classroom to give our students the best possible educational experiences that they can gain. And I know that what I've just said in this video sort of makes it seem that I'm against using technology in the classroom, and that's not the case at all. I think that we should be looking forward to using technology within the classroom and even outside of the classroom. But I think as teachers, we need to be mindful of the technologies we're using and how exactly they can help our students and where they can help them. We shouldn't be looking to use technology for the sake of using technology. We should be using technology to solve problems and accessibility issues that our students have to the curriculum, and I guess as well the hidden curriculum within the schools. Personally, I'm a big supporter of using technology. And I even spend much of my teacher's college days trying to look through technologies and see what I can incorporate into my classrooms. For example, in the classes that I have been teaching so far, I've been using a lot of Pear Deck and interactive slideshow technologies, as well as a lot of Kahoot. I love the opportunity to give students the chance to answer quizzes and do some trivia, and just make learning more interesting than a standard presentation. I also think that virtual simulations and virtual labs are a great tool to get students started on the right path and understanding theory and putting it into practice. But it's just also important to be mindful of the technologies we're using. And I think a piece of this is also asking students what technologies they've used before in a classroom and what has worked for them. As a teacher, we only have so much time to vet technologies. So if students can at least cut that process in half, that's great and very useful for you as a teacher. But anyways, after this discussion around the use of technologies in the classroom and how we should be careful about using technologies, we sort of devolved into what one would say is the dark side of the internet or the dark side of technology. For example, being critical of what you read and understanding what sources you're using. And there were a lot of people who were discussing how Wikipedia is the worst source that anyone can use and that no one should ever use it in academia or high school or classes or anything. That it basically shouldn't exist because it's not peer-reviewed. And this is something that I actually have a little bit of a problem with. I agree that Wikipedia is not necessarily the most reputable source, and I personally wouldn't want to see it included in a journal article or a research paper as a cited source. But I mean, that can often be said about the textbooks that we use in our classroom as well. They're a great first-glance source of information, but they often simplify research findings or omit things or information to simplify it to the reader. Now, I will say often the research papers we also read omit information, and that's not necessarily that we would know, but even they omit information to fit under certain narratives for publications or research grant guidelines. And I've seen this through my master's. Now, with that said, Wikipedia can be a great source of information for students if they just use their critical thinking skills. Wikipedia does have teams of people who read through and sift through any submitted information, so it's not that it's not completely reviewed, however, they also don't fact-check everything. So it's something that Wikipedia is a great place to go to for a brief understanding of a topic or to be pointed towards more resources, but they're not something that should be used on their own. And I mean, think of a case where you're discussing a topic with a student, and you're going to say, hey, can you tell me the fundamentals of, let's say, nuclear magnetic resonance, which is the field that I was particularly studying when I was in my master's. And the first thing you're going to do as a student is you're going to go to Google, you're going to type it in, and you're going to click on that Wikipedia page and read what you find. And that's enough for traditional conversations, but you can't really put that into practice with a reflection response or a answer to a question in a lab report. But if you just go and you find the references, you can at least be pointed towards the peer-reviewed articles that are good sources of information. I do think that teachers should encourage students to use Wikipedia to get an idea of what they're looking into or whatever topic they're studying. But I will agree that Wikipedia is not the most reputable source and needs to be used in combination with other sources. And I do think that it's a great opportunity for students to use their critical thinking skills to vet information from Wikipedia, and if that information is reputable or not. Well, and that's it for my little rant on Wikipedia and its usefulness or usefulness. Usefulness. Is that a word? But yeah, so that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this content. And if you did, please like and subscribe to my channel. It goes a long way in helping a new starting YouTuber out, such as myself. I'm hoping that in the future I will be able to revisit this topic and talk more about how we can use technologies in the classroom. And I think I probably will discuss that a little bit farther once I get into my actual school practicums next year. And I'll discuss what technologies I'm using and where they're useful and how they're helping students. But until then, this is where you'll have to be satisfied. So I guess have a great day, everyone. Good luck in your own classrooms and with everything going on in your life right now. And enjoy. Bye, everyone.